Hello Memphis, my name is Blake. I am a librarian with the Benjamin L. Hooks Central Branch Library, and I'm here again in the beautiful demonstration kitchen at the brand new Raleigh Branch Library. And today I'm going to do another recipe for you. It's going to be an oyster mushroom etouffee. It's going to be from this cookbook right here, Sweet Potato Soul by Janae Claiborne. If you are interested in this book or any of literally thousands of other recipe books, cookbooks, baking books, what have you, go check out any one of our 18 branches. So let's get started on this recipe. The first thing I did for this recipe was I just made a simple broth. It's so easy to make your own broth, and it's healthier because it has nothing processed unless you put something processed in there. And why would you do that? I'm just going to rough cut all these vegetables. I'm even going to put the onion skin. So there's really nothing wasted. There's nothing that you discard when you're making a broth until the very end when you skim out all the solids from the broth. So I'm not going to really be very exact about this part. I'm going to cut it into rough chunks. Yeah, so you don't need to worry about bite-sized pieces, or you don't need to cut into uniform pieces. You just need to cut up so that it can fit, and so that you can boil the most color, the most flavor, and the most nutrients out of these vegetables. So you can see I have a yellow onion, and I think I had about 5 or so carrots. You can see I'm even leaving the end on there. There's probably some good nutrients in there. You don't have to worry about eating it. Using the dull side of the knife to scrape. When I'm making the actual dish, I'm going to be more precise in my cutting. I'm going to cut smaller bite-sized pieces, and I'm not going to have stuff like this in the final dish. Okay, here's my garlic. I do this little trick to get the garlic peeled, although again we're not necessarily worried about it being peeled for the broth, but we do want it to be a little broken up because it'll boil nicer and we'll get more of the garlic flavor if it's smashed like. And now these vegetables just go right into the boiling water. I have about 10 cups of boiling water here. It is covered. And there we go. Also have some rice going here. Now you just need to let that go for about 20 or 30 minutes. Fresh spices are the best spices. So today I'm going to show you how to make a couple of different spice mixes. The first one is Old Bay spice. I have just some sea salt, some celery seed, paprika, dry mustard, ginger. This is white and black pepper. And here I have some nutmeg, mace, cardamom, allspice, and cinnamon. And then I have some cloves. I'm also going to add a few just standard red pepper flakes. Let me actually put a little bit in here with a regular pepper. Don't want to get too much. People can always add some spice and some heat later if they want it. But here's the deal with these spices. You can see that some of them are nicely ground and they're nice and fine, ready to go. And then some are like this that you wouldn't necessarily want to crunch down on one of these peppercorns if you're eating a bowl of etouffee. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to plop all of these ingredients into a coffee maker that has never touched coffee. I only use this coffee maker to grind spices. I am going to go ahead and put the ones that are already ground in as well, just so they'll get nice and mixed. But I'm going to want to, of course, concentrate on getting the big chunky spices. So first I'm going to put most of those in there. I don't want to get it too crowded because it won't grind as well. So that's about all I want to do to start out. I will get that nice and fine, and then I will add some of these other ones that are already ground just to mix it up. very easy. I wish you could smell this. Let's check on it. Okay, that's looking pretty good. So I'm gonna add these other ones, these sea salt, and those sweet spices. Okay, so very similar to the Old Bay seasoning, I'm now gonna make some Creole seasoning. Paprika, onion powder. You can also add garlic powder if you like. This is thyme. That's quite a bit of thyme. Margarine. Basil. Actually, that's basil and that's margarine. I have some white and black peppercorns, some cayenne, and some sea salt. So just like before, got my spice grinder here. I'm gonna put in the chunky stuff first. Salt and the pepper. I'm gonna go ahead and put this basil in there too, since it's out of everything that's left, it's kind of the biggest, although it's not very big. Still needs a little more. Although, since the other stuff needs to grind, let's just go ahead and put it all in, because it is much more ground than it was. Alright. Some escapees there. That's looking pretty good. Now, if you look at Miss Janae's cookbook, you will see that this particular dish calls for oyster mushrooms. I'm not using oyster mushrooms for a couple of different reasons. One, they're kind of hard to find around here, and if you do find them, they tend to be kind of pricey. So what I have chosen is a different kind of oyster mushroom. This is a king oyster mushroom. These things are massive. But why I'm telling you this in this great detail is because one of the things about these is these mushrooms are a little firmer, slightly more tough than regular oyster mushrooms. So I'm going to cut them into a little bit of smaller pieces. I'm going to saute them in a little bit of olive oil, and then I'm going to simmer them in a little bit of just some plain water, maybe a little salt. I'll soften them up a little bit so that in the actual etouffee itself, they'll be nice and tender. Split it right down the middle, kind of like I'm making a banana split. And I'll try to follow the curve of this one. And then just a rough chop. I'm a big mushroom fan, so I just happened to know that one of my favorite international markets has a great selection of mushrooms. Like if you try this recipe, you use whatever kind of mushroom you like. You can even use dried mushrooms. Dried mushrooms are a great option because you don't have to worry about them getting moldy or anything like that. They don't have to be kept in the fridge. They're pre-washed, so you don't even have to worry about washing them. Just if you choose to use dried mushrooms, whatever kind of mushroom you like, whether it's dried or fresh, just be sure if you use dried to soak them in some lukewarm water for about an hour before you make this dish. That'll soften them up nicely and they'll be ready, and even if you want to cut them, they will cut. I'm going to chop these, and of course, unlike what I did for the broth, I'm going to be really careful to make sure that these are bite-sized, and of course I'm going to get rid of the skin and the, all the extra stuff. I'm just going to have the pure onion. So, although if I was at home, I would save all of this stuff, put it in a freezer bag, and put it in the freezer to save for another time when I wanted some broth. Another thing I need to mention is, if you go back and look at the book, if you go to one of our branches and you check out this book, you will know that I am doubling the recipe. Move on to bell peppers. So again, if you follow the book, you're only going to be using 1 green pepper, unless you just really like pepper. That's one thing about when you are cooking. It is different from baking. When you bake something, you really have to follow the recipe to a T, or you could mess it up. Most of the time, if you're baking and you get some measurement wrong, or you mix it in the wrong way, or something like that, many times you have ruined that recipe. That's not so with cooking, especially something like a soup. If you want to add more pepper, or if you want to leave pepper out, that's entirely up to you. This is your dish. You're going to eat it, or you're going to serve it, or whatever. It's your decision. You can put 9 peppers in there if that's what you want to do. Those onions made me sniffly. Let's use about 3 stalks of celery. Garlic, smash. Tends to work better with bigger cloves of garlic. You see that's nice and skinless there. Sometimes you probably want to cut that off because that's kind of tough, but that's very easy to do. All ready to go. There are all the vegetables. So the broth is now ready. I have not yet separated out the solids, so I'll show you how I do it. Here we go, nice and simple. If you do any gardening, you can use these solids in your compost heap. See, that might be about 2.5 cups. 2.5, 3. When this recipe is ready to eat, I'm going to serve it over some brown rice. Again, it's your choice, whatever you want to do. I like to try to keep it to brown rice because it's just healthier for you. Brown rice takes a little longer to cook. Okay, so now we're going to make the roux. I have my olive oil in here. You can probably hear it. It's been heating up for a couple of minutes. I have it on probably medium-high. You do need to be careful of hot oil, of course. Now I have the same amount of just regular all-purpose flour, and I'm going to mix it together and heat it. The idea is to get it to be a nice toasty brown. You don't want to burn it, so that's perfect. This is about the right temperature, so I'm just going to put the rest of it in there. And then I'm just going to start whisking it. And you got to watch it pretty closely. Like I said, you don't want it to burn. You don't have to constantly stir it. Of course, you don't want any lumps. Probably could go a little bit more, but you could definitely start to see some color in there. You ready? Mm-hmm. First, I'm going to do the onions. Celery goes next because it's also kind of hard like the onions. Now I'm going to leave the garlic out for a couple more minutes because you don't want to overcook garlic. Overcooked garlic, if it's burned or even close to being burned, it just tastes nasty. So I'll add my salt real quick just because it's a perfectly good time. And here's how I'm going to do my garlic. I'm going to clear out a little space in the middle. I'm going to let the garlic cook right there in the middle, right directly on the bottom of the pan. And that will give it some good heat. That'll tenderize it a little bit. And before long, I'll just cover it up there. Before long, before it gets burned, I'm going to add some liquid that will slow down the cooking process for the garlic and keep it from burning. Okay, I think that's about long enough on the garlic, so I'm going to rescue it. I'm going to put my veggie broth right in the middle, where that garlic is. I'm going to turn up the heat a little bit because I'm going to want this to simmer. I don't want to give it a hard boil. I'll turn it up, not quite to high. And I'm going to add, remember I'm doing a double recipe, so I'm going to add a 28-ounce can of tomatoes, Old Bay seasoning, Creole seasoning. I have about 2 tablespoons of each. And I'm going to put a couple of bay leaves in there. Bay leaves are a great seasoning, but you may know that you do not eat the bay leaves themselves. They never really soften up. And when that starts to simmer, I'm going to add my mushrooms from earlier. You may remember that I cooked them separately so it would be nice and tender. Okay, so just added the mushrooms. And now, I'm going to let this simmer. I'm going to put it on medium. I'm going to let this cook for about 20 minutes. Okay, so here's our finished etouffee. Ooh, smells great. I'm all steamed up. So I have my rice right here. And here we go. That's looking pretty nice.
Cool.
Again, if you are interested in this or any number of other recipes, check out one of our branches across the city, and you can find this book here, Sweet Potato Soul by Janae Claiborne, or so many other cookbooks and recipe books in practically any genre you could want. I do want to thank the sponsors of so many of our different demonstrations and many other activities that we do around the library, and that is the Memphis Friends of the Library. We could not operate as well as we do if it wasn't for all that the Friends of the Library does for us. Thank you for choosing to start here with the Memphis Public Library. We'll see you next time.